Hi everyone, welcome back to ACE ISC Psychology for the final video on emotions and motivation. Today, we will look at social motives, frustration, and conflict, which are all very easy and relatable concepts, so I'm sure you will find this chapter very engaging. Towards the end, I will provide some important exam tips and some bonus exam questions that you can attempt to solve for yourself before I share the answer key and have a discussion on the marking scheme in the next video. So stay tuned till the end for the tips and the questions. Let us start with some scenarios. You've been working hard for weeks. You sit down to write your exam, and the paper is nothing like what you expected, so you freeze. You feel a wave of frustration so strong it's almost physical. Let's imagine another scenario. Your best friend gets the opportunity you've been working toward for months. You want to be happy for them, but you also feel something quite dark underneath, something you cannot quite name. Or imagine this. You've been offered your dream college, but it is in another city, far from everyone you love and know. You want to go, but you also want to stay, and you definitely can't do both. These are not just everyday moments, they are psychological events involving social motives, frustration, and conflicts. Let's examine these terms a little more. In the previous video, we've established that motives can be biological or psychological and social in origin. Today, we focus entirely on the second category, social motives. Social motives are motives that are learned through social experience and are directed toward social goals. Goals that involve other people, relationships, status, and belonging. Unlike biological motives, social motives are not universal. They vary significantly across individuals and cultures. They are acquired, so not inborn. They are shaped by upbringing, education, culture, and experience. And they also do not follow a fixed homeostatic cycle. The three social motives most important for your exams are achievement, power, and affiliation, though aggression is also frequently discussed in this section. Achievement motivation, also called the need for achievement, refers to the desire to accomplish something difficult, to master challenging tasks, or to attain a high standard of performance. The concept was developed first by David McClelland in the first 1960s and the 50s, building on earlier work by Henry Murray, who first identified achievement as a fundamental human need. People high in achievement motivation set moderately challenging goals, which are not too easy and not impossibly difficult. The sweet spot is a task that stretches them but is also achievable with effort. It takes personal responsibility for outcomes. They want to know it was their effort that produced the result, not luck or other people. They also seek feedback actively. They want to know how they are doing so they can improve. They prefer tasks with clear outcomes. Ambiguous situations frustrate them. These people are motivated by the accomplishment itself, not primarily by external reward, so achievement motivation is largely intrinsic. One thing important is the relationship between achievement motivation and the fear of failure. This was examined by McClelland and his colleagues. They identified two opposing forces at work when a person faces a challenging task: the hope for success, that is, the positive pull towards attempting the task, and the fear of failure, the anxiety about what losing would mean. High achievers are dominated by hope for success. People who consistently avoid challenge are often dominated by fear of failure. Understanding which force is stronger in a student explains a great deal about their academic behavior, as shown in the example below. Next, we come to power motivation, or the need for power. This is the desire to have influence, control, and impact over other people or one's environment. This was also studied extensively by McClelland. Power motivation comes in two forms: personalized power and socialized power. Personalized power is the desire for power for personal gain, dominance, and control over others. This form tends to be associated with aggression, manipulation, and exploitation. It is power as an end in itself. Socialized power is the desire for power in order to help, lead, inspire, and benefit others. a teacher who wants to shape young minds, or a leader who wants to drive positive change. These are examples which reflect socialized power motivation. This form is associated with responsible leadership and positive social impact. For your exams, the distinction between personalized and socialized power is a useful evaluation point. Power motivation is not inherently negative. It depends entirely on how it is being directed. Affiliation motivation, or the need for affiliation, is the desire to form and maintain close, warm, and harmonious relationships with other people. People high in affiliation motivation strongly value friendship, belonging, and being liked. They prefer cooperative tasks over competitive ones. They are uncomfortable with conflict and tend to avoid confrontation. They are also sensitive to signs of rejection or disapproval and draw energy and well being from social connection. You can see the overlap here with Maslow's law, love, and belongingness level. Affiliation motivation is essentially the active, driving version of that need. The tension between achievement and affiliation is as follows, because these two motives can pull in opposite directions. For example, a student with high achievement and motivation and low affiliation motivation may pursue goals independently, even at the cost of relationships. Conversely, a student with high affiliation motivation and low achievement motivation may prioritize belonging over personal performance, choosing to stay within the group rather than stand out. Most people carry both motives in different proportions and understand that tension explains a great deal of social behavior. The fourth social motive important to know for your exams is aggression. Aggression refers to behavior that is intended to harm, hurt, or dominate another person or group, physically, verbally, or psychologically. Aggression as a motive is complex. It can be hostile aggression, which is driven by anger and the primary goal of causing harm. The harm itself is the point. Or it can be instrumental aggression, driven by a goal that requires harming or dominating another. The harm is a means to an end, such as a boxer fighting to win a match, or a competitor undermining a rival. Some theorists argue that aggression has biological roots, such as aggression being an innate drive in animals and humans alike. It also has social learning roots. Albert Bandura's famous Bobo doll experiment demonstrated that aggression can be learned through observation and imitation. Children who watched an adult behave aggressively towards a doll subsequently imitated that behavior. This suggests that aggression is not purely instinctual, it is also socialized. For your exams, know both perspectives, biological and social learning, and be ready to apply them. Now we move to frustration, one of the most important and most relatable components of this chapter. Frustration is the emotional state that arises when a motivated behavior is blocked, delayed, or prevented from reaching its goal. There are some key elements that you need to be aware. There must be a goal the person is motivated to reach. There must be a barrier, internal or external, preventing goal attainment. The result is a state of tension, irritability, and emotional distress. Frustration can arise from external barriers. For example, an exam you cannot, no matter how you try, pass, or a traffic jam making you late, or a door that won't open. Or it can stem from internal barriers like a lack of ability, a personal fear, or a conflicting motive. The most important concept to know is the frustration aggression hypothesis, proposed by John Dollard and colleagues. This hypothesis made a bold claim. Frustration always leads to aggression, and aggression is always caused by frustration. The idea was that when a goal is blocked, the resulting tension naturally expresses itself as aggression, either directed at the source of frustration or displaced onto a substitute target when the real source is unavailable or threatening. Let's think of a classic example. A student is scolded unfairly by a teacher. The student cannot express anger towards the teacher, so they go home and snap at a younger sibling. The sibling is the displaced target, a safer outlet for the aggression that really belongs somewhere else. So, was this hypothesis correct? The original strong version that frustration always produces aggression has been revised. Later work has showed that frustration produces a readiness for aggression, but not aggression itself. Whether aggression actually occurs depends on environmental cues, weapons, aggressive role models, and provocative situations that can trigger aggression in a frustrated person. Frustration can also lead to other responses, like withdrawal, regression, problem solving, or increased effort. For your exam, know the frustration aggression hypothesis, know Dollard's name, and know that the original version has been modified, such as frustration is today a precondition for aggression, not a guarantee of it. And now we come to the section that appears in almost every examination: conflict. Conflict arises when a person faces two or more incompatible goals, desires, or motives simultaneously, and one must choose between them. There are three main types of conflicts that you need to know for your exams, as identified by psychologist Kurt Lewin. Type 1: Approach-Avoidance Conflict. This is the simplest type. The person is simultaneously attracted to two desirable goals, but can only choose one. Both options are positive, but the conflict is not painful in itself. It is the dilemma of choosing between two good things. For example, a student has been offered admission to two excellent colleges, one with a stronger science program, the other in a city she has always wanted to live in. Both are appealing, but she can only choose one. Let's have another example. You're hungry and you have to choose between two favorite foods. Either choice is pleasant, but you can only have one. So the key feature is that the conflict is usually resolved relatively easily once the person evaluates which option they value more. It does not tend to generate deep or prolonged stress. After the choice, the person typically feels satisfied with whichever option they selected. What psychologists call post-decisional dissonance reduces over time as we reassure ourselves we made the right call. Type 2: Avoidance-Avoidance Conflict. This is the most uncomfortable type. The person is simultaneously repelled by two undesirable options and must choose one because doing nothing is not an option. Both options are negative. The person does not want either, but they cannot avoid both. For example, a student who finds both mathematics and physics deeply difficult is told to choose between her board subject. She dislikes both equally. Either feels like loss. Another example: a person who hates going to the dentist but is also in severe tooth pain. They must choose between the discomfort of treatment and the pain of leaving it untreated. So the key feature is that avoidance-avoidance conflicts generates the most anxiety and most procrastination. The person often delays choosing for as long as possible. They may vacillate, that is, moving towards one option, then pulling back as that option becomes more real and more aversive, then moving back towards the other, then pulling back again. This back and forth is sometimes described as oscillation, and it is characteristic of this type of conflict. People sometimes resolve this kind of conflict by leaving the field entirely, that is, running away from the situation rather than choosing either option. This is an escape response. Type 3: Approach-Avoidance Conflict. This is the most psychologically complex and the most common type in real life. The person is both attracted to and repelled by the same goal simultaneously. The goal has desirable features that pull the person towards it and undesirable features that push them away, and both forces are operating at the same time. For example, a student desperately wants to audition for the school play. They love performing, but would also like the recognition. But they're also terrified of being judged, of forgetting their lines, or being a failure in public. The same goal generates both approach and avoidance. So the key feature is that the nearer the person gets to the goal, the stronger both forces become. But research suggests that avoidance gradient rises more steeply than the approach gradient as the goal gets closer. This means that the closer you get to the goal, the more fearful you become. This explains why people who desperately want something often sabotage themselves right at the last moment. the avoidance force has become overwhelming. In real life, most conflicts are even more complex. We face situations involving multiple goals, each with both attractive and evasive features. This is called the multiple approach avoidance conflict, and it is the most difficult and most realistic description. For example, choosing between two job offers. Job A pays well and is prestigious, but it involves enormous stress and long hours away from family. Job B is less prestigious and lower paid, but offers flexibility, meaning, and work life balance. Both are desirable in some ways and evasive in others. The person must weigh and balance four or more competing forces together. This is the type of conflict most people experience when making major life decisions, like careers, relocation, or education. It generates the most prolonged deliberation and the most residual doubt after a choice is made. Let us take a quick look at the exam tips for this video before moving on to the questions. Firstly, know the three conflict types with definitions and examples. They are almost guaranteed to appear in your examinations, either as short definition questions or as longer application questions. Always have a clear original example ready for each. Secondly, the frustration aggression hypothesis is important. Never write about frustration and aggression without naming Dollard or naming the hypothesis. Tip 3. The power, motivation, and achievement motivations are very important. For achievement motivations, the three characteristics, that is, moderate goals, personal responsibility, and feedback seeking, are co-content. For power motivation, distinguish personalized from social power. Moving on to application type scenarios. So in this video, more than any other video content, this is something that lends itself the most to examination application type questions. They will give you a scenario based on a concept we discussed and ask you to identify the type of conflict or social motives at play. Read the scenario carefully. Look for the key signal words like two positives mean approach, two negatives mean avoidance, or one goal, both attractive and frightening, means approach avoidance. And finally, as promised, here are some practice questions for you from the topics we covered in this video. As always, if you like our content, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more chapter explanations and exam questions. I have given you several application questions in this video with multiple subparts, which are very common for school exams as well as board exams. So do spend some time reading the given information carefully. Try to solve these yourselves and share your answers and doubts in the comments below. I will provide an answer guide in the next video once I complete this chapter, so you can cross-check your answers. That's all for today. Keep an eye out for our next video where I will share the answer key for all the questions we covered in the emotions and motivations chapter and have a discussion on the marking scheme. See you in the next one.